Ever wonder where some customs got their start? Ever wonder why we still continue to carry out some of them even though there's no real reason to? Well, here are 10 everyday customs that no longer make sense. Tipping. The term tip was first used in the 1600s as a slang word for gratuity. This was the practice of providing a small sum of money for services rendered. It began in Tudor England in the 17th century when overnight house guests were expected to provide a small sum of money known as vails to the host's servants. Over time, it was used as a means to obtain additional service, such as larger portions or faster service. In parts of North America today, service jobs such as waitstaff and bartenders rely on tips to make ends meet, as these positions sometimes have a lower minimum wage due to the possibility of tips. Maybe they should be paid a reasonable wage so tips aren't necessary as many other countries have done? The 13th floor. Nowadays, seeing a building that exceeds 10 or more stories is hardly a rare sight. But once we've stepped into the elevator, we may notice something odd. Even when buildings have more floors, the number 13 rarely appears. Sometimes it will be skipped entirely, calling the 13th floor the 14th. Other times it may not be accessible via the elevator and used only for maintenance materials. This was partially due to superstition in the old days, as many consider the number 13 to be unlucky. Baby goods. Many expectant parents have heard all kinds of advice, tips, tricks, and superstitions from friends, family, and even strangers. One superstition has stood the test of time and continues to this day: that you shouldn't buy anything for the baby before it's born. Today, it doesn't make a lot of sense and can even leave parents unprepared, but once upon a time, it was to save expectant mothers from heartbreak. During a time when infant mortality was very high, mothers would be forced to look at the belongings of their deceased children, so if nothing was bought or made, there was nothing to remind them. Early death among newborns has dropped drastically since then, but the once practical warning has now become just another one of those things we continue to do. 2 months salary. Many people believe that when buying a diamond engagement ring, it should cost at least 2 months' salary. This wasn't always the case. In fact, the idea has only been around since the 1980s. De Beers, the luxury jewelry store that coined the phrase "diamonds are forever" during the Great Depression, launched a campaign comparing the price of the ring to the worth of the relationship. With ads that displayed such ideas as 2 months' salary showed the future Mrs. Smith what the future will be like, and you can't look at Jane and tell me she's not worth 2 months' salary, many men were led to believe that they'd be rejected if they didn't spend at least that amount for a ring. Gender preference. During times of war, famine, and generally shorter lifespans, it made sense that families wished to have at least one son to carry on the family's name and lineage. In today's society, women are no longer given to her husband's family. They no longer cost their parents a dowry, and they can work. Women can even keep their maiden names and pass them along to their children should they choose. Despite this, the preference for sons still runs deeply in some cultures and places throughout the world. Wedding registries. In the past, young couples were either still living at home before they married or met for the first time at the altar. Back then, wedding registries made sense. It was meant to provide the new couple with all the things they needed to start a new home as they began their new life together. Today, there are a vast majority of couples that already live together prior to marriage or never marry. They already have everything they need, so there's no reason to add to it for the sake of ceremony. Bachelor/bachelorette parties. The concept of bachelor parties has been around since the 5th century BC, when Spartan warriors would celebrate a friend's last night as a single man. There would be a dinner in their honor, celebrating the new life the groom was beginning with his bride. These gatherings were black tie events hosted by the groom's father, since they were akin to business deals rather than romantic attachment. But somewhere along the way, they began as an excuse to ogle half-naked members of the opposite sex and drink until passing out. Nowadays, couples aren't even really bachelors or bachelorettes as they have been in long-term relationships prior to marriage. Imperial metric system. While most of the world uses Celsius, meters, and kilometers, there are still 3 countries that use the imperial metric system of old: Liberia, Myanmar, and the United States of America. While this old method has its merits, it is less precise and can lead to confusion if traveling outside the US. So why still use it? Because that's what they've always used. Expressions. Nowadays, there are a lot of expressions that we still use on a daily basis that no longer make sense. For example, telling someone to roll down their window, hanging up a phone, or turning devices on and off. These expressions made sense when we physically needed to crank a lever to open a window or place a phone back on its cradle to hang up, but now they are used out of habit. Daylight saving time. Despite popular belief, daylight saving time was not created for farmers. The idea was first proposed in New Zealand by entomologist George Hudson in 1895, but it was not implemented. It was actually the German Empire during World War I that first used the idea of daylight saving as a way to conserve coal. After seeing their success, Britain and many other European nations began to follow suit. The idea made its way to North America around 1918. Since then, it has periodically been abandoned by some countries and altered by others. Since we no longer use coal and candles for heat and light, it's not as necessary as it once was, but we still do it. Do you agree with these long-time customs no longer being needed? Leave us a comment down below and let us know what you think. Please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, check out some other videos on our awesome channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.